All right, folks, it is 2:30. It is time for our next session. We have Satish Nori and Brittany Armstrong here to give us some hints on prompts. Satish, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Shelley. This is such a great event. It's a huge honor to be a part of it. So I work at Just Tech, and we are a legal consulting company that helps nonprofits. And one of the things that we are really focused on these days is prompting. Many of you have heard about prompt engineering, which is becoming a new skill set for everyone, but in particular, legal professionals. So, in the 20 minutes that we have, we're going to talk about the TROK framework, which is something that I invented, TROK, and give you a practical guide for legal research, drafting, and advocacy. Let me see if my Okay, so why does prompting matter? Well, it matters a lot. First, AI is language prediction. It's not like a Google search or Westlaw or Lexis search. AI responds based on patterns in training data. It's not legal reasoning. So prompting well means good results. Poor prompting means poor results. It's as simple as that. Many people, when they first start using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, use it the way they would use Google. They would search and they would put in one or two words or maybe a phrase and expect a result like they would get in a search engine. That's not how this works at all. And sometimes it's really difficult to break the habit of using AI the way you'd use a search engine. What I'm here to tell you today is that effective prompting is something you can learn. It's not something that you're either born with or you're born without. The next principle that you should take away from this is that legal context requires precision. Precision prompting means you get accurate and reliable results, and it can make you much more efficient. You'll get the answer you're looking for in the appropriate context. And that's the key word here, context. That's what separates AI chatbots from regular search engines. The last thing here is that a structured prompt can deliver consistency. And what some people do is they save their prompts. They use the same prompt for a specific task over and over. And there are things called system prompts, which is the way that ChatGPT works under the hood. There are things that tell a chatbot how to communicate, how to respond, what type of language to use, and so on. And if you're more advanced at using chatbots, you'll learn how to change the system prompts. And any kind of AI wrapper tool or third-party AI tool, specifically in a legal context, it's going to have very specific system prompts that will automatically bake in certain types of results. So remember, the takeaway here is bad prompting is the new bad lawyering. And the opposite of that, the I don't know, contrapositive, I can't remember my logic, but good lawyering means good prompting. So let's move on to the next slide. So here's the TROK framework. This is something I made up out of thin air, but it's been very useful for me. TROK stands for task, role, output, and knowledge base. This is what makes AI and chatbots so unique and so powerful. So the task is simple. This is what you'd enter in a search engine box, right? What do you want? An example in a legal context is summarize a housing court decision. This is a decision I got from a judge. What does it mean? That's the task. That's something we've already learned how to do from like decades and decades of using Google search and web search. Role. Now, this is something that search engines can't do. Role means you can define for the chatbot how you want it to behave. So the role could be, I want you to be a New York City housing attorney. That's what I do. Or you could say, I want you to be a kindergarten teacher. Maybe you want to explain this to someone who doesn't have any legal training whatsoever. Or you can say, I want you to be the chief judge of the US Supreme Court, or act in that way. That's something that's specific to AI in that you can define the role. So far we have task and we have role. So what's the O? The O is output. And the output, this is where the magic really happens for me. You can change the format. You can change the tone. You can change the literal output of the result. For example, you can say, give me bullet points. Give me paragraphs in the style of a New York Times op-ed. You can say, give it to me in Spanish. You can say, write me a haiku in the, for the output. All of these things are possible. And in the legal context, when we work, sometimes bullet points are really, really helpful because we want to summarize something quickly. Sometimes you can say, give it to me in a fourth grade reading level because I want to explain this judge's decision to my client, right? You could say, give it to me in a fourth grade reading level in Bengali, right? All of those things are possible. So that's the O. So far, we have the task, the role, and the output. So finally, knowledge base. And this is where you might have heard the term RAGbot earlier today. And RAG is where the knowledge base or the source of the AI is limited to a particular set of information. That's what a knowledge base is. So here you could say, rely only upon the decision that I've uploaded, right? Because you want a summary of a housing court decision. Or you can say, here's a bunch of statutes. I want you to rely only on this statute. Or you could say, here is a law review article on the subject. I want you to explain this to me, but rely only on that law review article. And guess what? You don't have to limit yourself to one source. You can upload almost an unlimited quantity of sources. And in Shelley's demo of Notebook LM, you saw how that could be possible. If you're trying to come up with some kind of output, you can upload almost any amount of material that you need to, as long as you have access to it. So that's TROK, task, role, output, and the knowledge base. And if you remember those four principles, you're going to boost your prompting skills 10 times, 100 times over. So let's move on to the next part, which is here is a sample prompt in the TROK format. The task is to write a letter. So that's very simple, right? You want a letter. Example, draft a demand letter to a landlord who has failed to make repairs despite multiple requests. The letter should request immediate action and outline potential legal consequences. Okay, so that's the task. That is something that I probably do once a day in my job as a tenant attorney. You may have similar tasks that you do over and over again in your roles. Next, the role. So who are you? Well, I'm a tenant rights attorney, and I want this letter to sound as if it's coming from me. So I'm defining the role for the AI as tenant rights attorney. So it defines the perspective, it defines the expertise. Example, you are an experienced housing attorney with 10 years of experience representing low-income tenants in New York City, and you're familiar with the warranty of habitability and relevant housing codes. So you're basically in this situation, or I am in this situation, making the AI mimic me as much as possible. So the result is going to sound like it came from me. Remember, the task is to write a letter. The role is to sound like me as a tenant rights attorney. Now the output. How do we want this letter to read? Well, here we want plain language. We want to send this to some small-time property owner in Queens who's unrepresented and may not understand legal language. And so we want it to be simple. So write in a clear, non-technical language that my client can understand, or a landlord. Avoid legal jargon, but include necessary legal terms with brief explanations. Format as a formal letter with appropriate headings and sections. So that tells the AI how the letter should look. And you can modify this however you want. Maybe you're writing to a big housing agency and you want it to be as formal as possible. Maybe you're writing to an attorney on the other side of your case. And so you want it to sound as legalistic as possible. Maybe you want it to be a little more threatening, a little more biting. So the output can be controlled in that way. Now, the last one, again, remember the K is knowledge base. So what do you need this letter to contain? Well, you want it to contain the facts of your case. So, for example, this is a non-payment rent suit. This could be an application for rent assistance, whatever it might be. So the facts here might be, my client has lived in the apartment for 5 years. They have documented 3 requests for repairs in the past 2 months, blah, blah, blah. And you can just cut and paste this maybe from your case notes. Of course, you would want to exclude your client's personally identifying information, but the general facts of the repair issues can easily be cut and pasted into a chatbot so that you get the output that you want. And if you do all of these things in about 5 seconds, you're going to have a letter that is probably 90% ready to send and get the result that you're seeking for your client. And then you can move on to the next task that you need to do. So here are some best practices in the final 9 minutes that we have left. First is iterate. Practice doing this. Ask follow-up questions, clarify the responses. Remember, it's not like you only get one chance at prompting. You can keep going all day long and have a long conversation with a chatbot until you get the result that you need. And what's really great with some of our newer models that have memory is that they remember those things that you went through in the past. And the next time you prompt it, they're going to be closer to giving you what you wanted. So ask follow-up questions, refine your prompts, add relevant facts gradually to improve accuracy and comprehensiveness. The best results come from multiple exchanges. Another way to look at it is think of the person. I said person, that's weird. Think of the AI chatbot as an intern or a new associate, somebody you're teaching about how to practice. How would you talk to that person? You would slowly guide them towards the result and the process towards that result. The next tip is grounded in truth. Always verify the output, verify the facts, check the citations if there's any case law or citations or statutes in the output. You should never file or send something directly out of the AI chatbot. That would be a huge mistake. You should check it. Think of it as a starting point, a first draft, or maybe even a second draft. That's how good these things are. And so you just have to tweak it, check it, verify it, and you're pretty much good to go. The next thing is, remember, there's no legal advice that you should take from an AI chatbot. And if this is a public-facing interaction, an AI cannot establish an attorney-client relationship or provide personalized legal advice. For all of us who are using AI, it's an assistant, it's a tool. That's the way that we want to think about it. And in fact, our professional responsibility obligations require that we check that we can't file anything or submit anything that's false, that we kind of monitor and maintain the tools that we use, and we learn how to use them properly. This is all within our existing obligations under the professional responsibility rules. And then finally, and this is a big one, confidentiality is paramount when you're using chatbots. You have to protect your client's confidentiality. So don't just upload your entire case notes into a chatbot and say, generate a letter for me. Those case notes are going to contain your client's name, address, sometimes the last 4 of their social, sometimes all the digits of their social, income, phone number, really key information that bad actors are desperately looking to get because they can make money off of that information. So Never put client identifying information or privileged communications into public AI platforms. Now, there are other types of AI tools that you can use that are supposed to be secure, but I leave that to you and your organization to figure out. But if you're just using something that you've downloaded on your personal device, don't put anything confidential in there. Don't put any names or personally identifying information because it's not secure. It might show up in somebody else's query in a different context. All right, so I think we have 5 minutes left. And I'm doing a solid to the next speaker, who is also me. So I guess we can stop here. And Shelley, are we allowed to take questions?
Of course, you actually have 10 minutes left.
I have 10 minutes left.
You
Okay.
do.
So let's take some questions. And here's one more point that I can make, which is practice prompting like it's a legal skill, like you might practice oral argument in court. Be deliberate, methodical, and seek to continuously improve. And keep a track of your old prompts. Save them, build upon them, add to them, and keep a database, a collection of those prompts so you can cut and paste them and work more quickly as you proceed down the road of AI prompting. This can be a huge time saver for many of the repetitive tasks that we do that don't require a lot of brain power but take up a lot of our time. So let me open it up for some questions.
I really like that acronym, Satish. And I don't know about anybody else, but I just wish that Satish had been one of my law professors. I mean, he's just very calming. um, so, what questions do we have? Here we go. We have a question. We store client files in Google Shared Drives. Are there AI platforms that can work with that setup while maintaining strong privacy protections, specifically ones that won't share or use our data to train models? I know we'd need to dig deeper into each option, but what are some of the platforms worth exploring?
Well, this is the million-dollar question in my day job. Which platforms should we use? Which ones work with our existing platforms? And it's kind of the Wild West right now. For example, many teams use Microsoft products, and Microsoft has Copilot, which for an extra $20 a month per user, you can add to your Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and SharePoint, and even Teams. And technically, you can build agents and chatbots to interact with your existing information, which you assume is already secure, right? Because you've already paid Microsoft in the pre-AI world to make sure that that information is secure. However, some people say the Microsoft Copilot bots aren't the best and they'd rather use ChatGPT. So I've heard of other use cases where ChatGPT team licenses are being used and people feel comfortable using those tools with client confidential information. And that's up to your org, right? And your IT department to make those decisions. And it might also be dependent on your jurisdiction. What is allowed? What tools are deemed to be acceptable? For example, in New York State, our state court system decided that Zoom is not secure. So we can't use Zoom for any court meetings or court interactions. And that's really kind of annoying because Zoom is better in many ways, more easy to use for our clients than Teams. But our court system has determined that Teams is more secure. So I didn't really answer your question because I don't want to be on the hook in case something goes wrong with your information. But I think just do your homework, talk to people, and you've got to make that decision within your org and figure out what is your acceptable level of risk on using either a third-party AI tool or a tool that's built by Google to access your client information in order to give you these kinds of efficiencies through AI. Brittany, do you want to add anything to that? I know that you're more familiar with some of these things than I am, and you do this every day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Satish. I find that I'm always using different AI tools to assist in my work. ChatGPT is my main go-to, and it really does help to cut back on time with repetitive tasks. We are also looking to automate a lot of our processes internally using AI with our project management tools, which is helpful. And also other AI tools that I found useful. Creating slide decks with Gamma has been really helpful. Being able to take text and turn it into visuals with Napkin AI has also been helpful. And also being able to edit videos with certain AI tools. I've used Gemini for that. I can go on and on, but yes, definitely. Really just incorporating AI into my day-to-day task has definitely cut back significantly on time for sure.
Great. And by the way, I used Gamma to make that PowerPoint that you saw. And how did I do it? I'd be, if I told you, you'd be disappointed in how much time I prepared for this training. But basically, I came up with some ideas, prompted ChatGPT to give me an outline for slides, and then dropped that outline into Gamma. And within 5 minutes, I had a PowerPoint presentation, a slide presentation that's ready to go. And then I just had to tweak it and tailor it to make sure that it met my requirements. And so that would have taken me, 10 hours, even 6 months ago. And now I can do it in 15 minutes. And what does that mean? Well, that means I have a lot more time to waste on Instagram or LinkedIn. No, I'm kidding. It means I have a lot more time to do the other important work that I need to do. Looks like we have a comment from Elizabeth Buck. If you use Microsoft 365, you can purchase a more secure version of Copilot. Yes, exactly. Whether that would work with the Google file setup, yeah, that is something that we will look into right away at Just Tech. We kind of all know from experience that Google and Microsoft don't play well with each other. They're like two bullies in a sandbox. Same with Apple. So unfortunately, it is a competitive market out there. And so a lot of these tech companies are building their own little walled gardens and they don't want to play. They don't want to allow people to bring their toys into their garden. I'm mixing a lot of metaphors and analogies here. I apologize,
So
but
we
you
do
get what
have
I'm
another
saying.
question. Um, Jeremy asks, are there prompts to discourage hallucinations?
Yes, literally, I say, don't make up stuff. That's it. Don't make up stuff. Give me verifiable citations. Um, give me um, give me the source material. Those are all ways in which you can make sure that false made up stuff doesn't come in, but you should still check it. Sometimes, even when those things, um, you get stuff that's not real. And so you should still check the source. So asking for the source is a very good way to go. Yes, as Shelley describes in the note in the chat.
We still have about a minute. If so, oh, there we go. Great suggestions on prompting. May I share your acronym and training prompts with others in the legal profession, crediting you for your work?
Of course, and you don't need to credit me because I probably borrowed it from Tom Martin and other people who are active in this space. But feel free to come up with your own acronym. TROK is just something that I remember, and I can't remember the other one that I learned. So if there's an acronym that is better for you, as long as it has those elements, I think it'll do the job.
And we have a question. Does it ever help to flatter the chatbot?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that I've heard, and thanks, Mark. It's an honor to have you here. Um, that if you flatter it, you get better results. If you say, I'm going to bribe you, I'll give you $50, you'll get better results. But then Sam Altman recently said that all the thank yous and pleases have cost OpenAI millions and millions of dollars in extra processing costs. And those add up to kind of, worse outcomes for the environment as well. Um, TROK stands for task, role, output, and knowledge base.
And these slides will be added to the event page with all the other materials from the day in the recordings. All right. Well, we have come to the end of this session. We have a 5-minute break before we have another session. The next session is going to be integrating AI into legal aid. And we have some really exciting new things that Michael and Quentin are going to share with us. And some of them you may not have seen before. So I hope you'll be able to stick around. We're going to take a 5-minute break.